All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jerred Moon here with the twins.
Yes. Twins, you say.
Yeah, it's Kyle and
Love it.
Joe, and they're
We
wearing the
just,
same exact shirt. And I
in
love
case
it.
you
And
didn't
it
know
was
which
not
podcast
planned.
you were on. Yeah.
It wasn't
It's three
planned, which
ways.
is
Yeah.
the fact that it wasn't planned just makes my whole life right there. But
It's happened to
And
us
you
a bunch
could
of
have been
times.
wearing this shirt for this
I
episode
will actually. So I told them the story before. I was wearing that shirt this morning, but then I changed shirts, so it's weird.
and refused to change it again.
Yeah, I can't change that many times.
Solidarity means nothing.
Well, welcome to the 28th of December. That's when this will be published. So we are rolling into a new cycle. Really awesome. Welcome to the new cycle. If you're not signed up for the new cycle, go do that. Just go to garagemathlete.com, sign up, because this is the first week. Great way to kick off your year. So welcome to the new cycle and almost 2021, where things are going to be completely different than they were in 2020. I'm calling it. So let's get some updates from everybody. Joe, how's life?
Pretty good, pretty busy. This is definitely our busier time of year with, holidays is one thing, but changing over cycles and getting prepped for all that changeover is always exciting, fun, interesting. I am also, well, I guess I can do this, use this as my update. I'm writing the full strength cycle next, this wave coming up. So this past cycle I jumped in partway through. I wrote the wave 2 and 3, so weeks 4 to 12, or 5 to 12. But this next cycle will be my first full cycle writing for strength, and I've got some pretty decent plans for it. So kind of excited about that. So I'll be sticking with strength this upcoming cycle. Spoiler alert, because of that, I want to see just do one of my full cycles from start to finish.
Awesome. Yeah, I've seen his plan. It's a good one. So if you're on that strength track, you're gonna have some fun.
It's good fun.
Kyle, how's life for you, man?
Life's going well. When this publishes, this will have already happened, but as of right now, I'm still looking forward to it. Christmas Vacation. Not the movie. Watched that last night.
Just to get prepped for your vacation.
Right.
I'm okay skipping that movie.
Hannah and I are going on a little Christmas vacation this year. We're going to let the kids stay with her parents for a couple of days, and she and I are going to go and have some alone time for a couple of days. I'm really looking forward to that. So that's going to might become a yearly thing. We'll see how it goes. But this is kind of in lieu of getting each other Christmas presents, like actual things. Instead, we're gifting each other with a vacation without the kids. So that should be a lot of fun.
We are doing a staycation.
What is Christmas like in Bahrain?
Just the same, but sandier and sunnier.
Nice.
Yeah, what's the high on Christmas Day looking like since we
right now, this past weekend, I guess going forward, it's like 70 to 72.
So not much different than Texas. I think our highs we're looking at about 70 for Christmas Day.
We've been in the 70s the last few years on Christmas Day here in Tennessee too.
It's crazy. So. Yeah, even
Maryland.
I remember wearing shorts one year. Well, that's comes with it.
Global warming.
That's it, man. That's it. Also, another update. I miss my bike. I've been running a lot for BCT, and I really miss my bike. And I don't know where to work it in. I don't know where. And
surprisingly, I haven't missed it that much.
I also I had just really gotten into it and was really enjoying, the whole process of becoming a cyclist, I guess. I don't know. And I had just gotten it tuned up, got a new seat on it, all that kind of stuff, new handlebar grip tape, man. And it was riding really smooth. Then I started BCT, and
you could use it for almost all the Zone 2 stuff.
That's true.
That's just going to be like a staple every week. So I think that's probably the best place to fit it.
All right. This is an actual bike, not a stationary.
No, it's an actual one. Yep, it's sitting.
Actually go places. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what's cool about bikes is how far you can actually go.
Yeah.
That's the bummer about running. It's like you can run an hour and you're not really that far away from home.
No. Yeah, that's a good idea though. Yeah, for the zone 2 stuff. I'll start doing the bike for zone 2. Yeah. There we go. No, I won't have to wait like another 9 months before I ride my bike again.
Solving problems.
That's it.
That's what I do.
That's what we're here to do. That's why I come here.
All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the podcast today and give an update. I only have one update. So today we are, and I'm thinking this might be something I start doing. You know, we change things up in 2021, and I'm just going to try it out here where I kind of tell you what we're going to do on the podcast before we do it. Like, wouldn't that be like a nice thing to hear towards the beginning of like
breakdown? Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I mean, the only thing
Setting the table.
Yeah. If you're listening, all you have is the title. You're like, I hope it's good, you know, and you don't really know. And so I'll tell you what we're talking about. Today, we're talking about a study that has to do with nitric oxide supplementation and how that may or may not be good for you. So we'll talk about that. We're covering a book. We try and cover a book every single month. Some months we get a little bit busy and carried away with other stuff, but most months we've hit it. And this month is The Coddling of the American Mind. So we'll be talking about that book. Really good book. I know we all have a lot to say on it, so that's awesome. And then this week's workout is Condition Me to the Grave, which is one of my favorites. And I think I'll definitely try and work this one into BCT and actually accomplish it. Now, the only update I have, so this is being published on December 28th, the Killing Comfort Planner is a thing now. So if you were around kind of the launch of the Killing Comfort book, there was a planner. We only really released it to people who had purchased the book. It was kind of like a bonus perk. You got the PDF version of the Killing Comfort Planner for free. And there's some like short video training, call it video tutorials. I mean, none of the videos are like longer than a minute. It's not hard to describe a planner, you know, but like it just goes over how to use it, how to best utilize it. So we do have the Killing Comfort Planner available. And what's really cool, Marco put together this ridiculously helpful like spreadsheet planner of Killing Comfort. You almost have to see it to like see how awesome it is, but really is the Killing Comfort Planner in a spreadsheet version. So if you want to use something on your computer and it like calculates things for you, because we track a lot of stuff in the Killing Comfort Planner. So that's cool. You'll get, if you do want the planner, you can go to killingcomfort.com and buy the planner, but you get that spreadsheet, which is amazing. You'll see a video tutorial about that spreadsheet in there. You'll also see all the video tutorials about just using the PDF, and you'll get the PDF, but we are printing actual hard copies of the planner. So it's going to be the exact same size as the Killing Comfort book. So the Killing Comfort book is 5.5 inches across and 8.5 inches tall. It's the exact same size. It has a really awesome, if I had if I had it in hand, I'd show it to you, but I'm actually working on getting the first copy over the next week or two. But anyway, it's got a really awesome wolf on it. It says Killing Comfort, and you can kind of see the planner, and I'll explain a lot more. But that was, it's something that's really been worked on for several months now, but just all kind of came to fruition here at the end of actually putting it together to sending it to print and all that. So if you're into planners, start of the new year is a great time to get a planner. And this one is very, very specific to like things that we do in the Killing Comfort book, if you've read the book. So go to killingcomfort.com, check out the planner. And that's it. I'm excited about it.
People finally get their wolf.
They get the wolf cover. Yeah.
I'm pumped about it too. It's gonna
hotly
be really
debated.
cool.
It was.
Came down to the wire on that.
Yeah, I think you were the wire.
I think you pushed
That's
it
why I
over.
said that.
Yeah. You're new. We're going to have call signs.
The wire.
You're the
Kyle
wire.
the Wire Shrum.
He likes it. He likes it.
I'm cool with that. I'm
Yeah.
cool with it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into the study. So the actual name of the study was Synergistic Effect of NO Precursor Supplementation and Exercise Training. Okay. So we've talked about dietary nitrate before, right? We've talked about beets. And so this is along that same supplementation conversation, but they're doing 6 grams of citrulline and 520 milligrams of nitrate. And you can go back to our beets episode to learn a little bit more about nitric oxide and what it does to your blood vessels and how it can help you perform better. And there's a lot of research on that. But this was a combination of those two things, and it was a longer duration, which was cool. So I'll just talk about some of the specifics of the study. And then my kind of like backwards confused takeaway about what to think about this. So it was a randomized double-blind trial with 24 healthy young people. There are 12 females. They performed vascular function assessment, which is like blood pressure, pulse wave velocity, some sort of vasodilation test, a lot of different things. And then they did both local and whole body cycling exercise tests to exhaustions before and after a 2-month exercise training program and daily intake of a placebo or nitrate-rich salad and citrulline, which was N plus C, blah, blah. I don't think I need to say anything. So basically they had just a carbohydrate drink that was a placebo, or they had the actual citrulline and nitrate supplement. And this was for a 2-month. And they did, unilateral knee extensions. They saw who's stronger and aerobic tests and all that jazz. And all they really found, but I'll get into my bigger takeaway after. All they really found was it was the maximal leg extension, right? Like the strength was the only true thing that came out to being statistically significant over 8 weeks of training, that it improved. And then I'm going to throw my own little asterisk on that, and I'm more going to ask questions that I don't have the answer to. But I'd love to see what you guys thought. So supplementation with the stuff seemed to help people become a little bit stronger, but it didn't seem to help with like aerobic or muscular endurance, things like that. So what do you guys think about this study?
So it was good to see that they improved. Both groups improved but I think it was mostly because they're untrained athletes. They said they had to be not working out with like more than twice a week or something like that. But the training that they did was how I took it, concurrent training. They did like a resistance day, they did a circuit day, they did a max power and aerobic test day. So they were varying their training a lot. I guess spray and pray just to see what the supplement benefited the most from, and I guess strength was the one that they did. So I don't know if they just went about it at more of a random way of programming wise. I didn't like see the actual breakdown of the entire week of programming, but it was 8 weeks of this varied programming of how they went through it. It looked, and out of that, strength endurance came out ahead, which is still cool because that's a lot of what we do anyway. But let's see what else was there. Yeah, I mean that's kind of what the main thing that I took from that was that they weren't exactly. I'm not sure what they were trying to go for with the programming is what I would kind of like to see. But there was still a noticeable improvement in the ones who had the nitric supplementation versus the ones who did not, for the placebo group. So it seems for what they had to, I won't take much away from Kyle, but from how you can interject it into your nutrition, your diet, it seems not hard to do. So something to look more into, but I'll pass it on over to Kyle now.
I was about to say, you've pretty much taken everything already.
I mean, there was
the programming that they put the participants through was a little strange. They weren't really super specific with some of the aspects of the programming, but it definitely was concurrent training. They were doing some cycling, they were doing some running, they were doing some knee extensions. I could just
read off real quick what they were doing, because I have it pulled up right here. It says the first weekly session was high intensity cycling with 20 to 120 second bouts at 80 to 100% of maximal aerobic power. So that was the first training session during the week. The second session consisted of several sets of leg extensions with 3 to 9 reps per set, using 60 to 90% of their 1 rep max. After leg extensions, the session included some circuit training, alternating between 30 seconds of activity and 20 to 30 seconds of recovery. So CrossFit-ish, and sounds like, but with with rest periods in there. Then they had leg extensions. And I do think that's a weird aerobic test to only do 20 to 120 seconds. I mean, anyway, back to you. That's what they were doing for the programming.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting at. It said several sets and it said some intervals, you know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, how many? You know what I mean? Like, how many were you actually doing? Like, that's kind of what I want to see. But anyway, the supplementation definitely helped with the muscle gain, and they were specifically training the knee extension, which is, basically the same movement as a squat. And so I was just, and they were testing the quads. And so it just made me think, hey, BCT boys, pay attention to your nitrate supplementation. Make sure that you're getting your nitrate in and helping with those quad gains, because that's basically what we're doing on BCT. We're doing a lot of quad work, doing a lot of squatting and a lot of running. And also, anytime we talk about supplements, do your research on supplements. Make sure that you're getting good, high quality stuff. But kind of like what Joe was saying, you can basically replicate the results of this. Instead of using supplements, you can just eat good stuff that has the dietary nitrate in there. You can eat things like beets, like lettuce, celery, radishes, spinach, those kinds of things. You start getting those things into your diet, and you're going to be getting that dietary nitrate that you need to help out with that muscle gain. So it's definitely helpful. It's not, I don't think it's going to be, the be all end all of your gains, but it's definitely helpful. And those are things that you should be eating anyway. So just go eat those things and you'll help with your muscle gains.
They did have a linear progression. It was just overall volume. They started adding sets. So they didn't get heavier with it. They just started week 1. They did 18 sets of whatever exercises that they were doing. And by week 8, they were at 30 sets.
Mm-hmm. They just progressed each week. Yeah, and they were vague on what the circuit training was, but it was in there. But here's so overall, if I read this study and you were like, hey, read the study and see if you think that you would take the supplement, I would say no. I don't see enough of a reason to be taking a citrulline and nitrate supplement combination. But at the same time, there's a lot more research on the nitrate side of this thing for helping endurance athletes. So I was actually really surprised when they're like, nah, it didn't help maximal aerobic performance. And I know that they were trying to go for both. I do think that they tested it a little odd, and I'm not trying to stick up for nitrate because I think it's an amazing deal. I do think that you can eat it easier than you can supplement, but I do find it odd that they didn't find it helpful, but a lot of other research does. And so then that's when I dig into the numbers. I'm like, this is a little bit strange. But they reported people's VO2 max. And I don't know if you guys looked at the change, but the placebo group VO2 max they have a range, right? So they put 50.4 plus or minus 7.4. And if you guys know anything about VO2 max, this is the placebo baseline, 50 VO2 max. That's pretty solid to start.
Yeah.
That's a good, and then they end this is the placebo group. So just from training, basically, they ended with 54 plus or minus 6.1. They're up to 54 on their VO2 max. And then now let's talk about the supplementation group. They started 52.4 plus or minus 8.8. So a little bit higher range. But then they ended at 57.8, almost 58. And some of these people, plus or minus 7.1, I mean, some people were above 60. And they ultimately say this doesn't come out to any sort of statistical significance. But then this goes back to like, are you kidding me? Like, this is a huge, you know how hard it is to change your VO2 max and how long it takes? Like 8 weeks is just a primer. Like your VO2 max change is getting warmed up. So the fact that there's this much change in people's VO2 max, either, maybe the training was good because it happened in both, but if you're almost 4 points higher than someone on VO2 max, you're running circles around that human being. It doesn't matter about statistical significance anymore. If I go on a run with somebody who has 4 points higher than me on their VO2 max, I'm going to feel like a child, because that's just how VO2 max works. It's once you get to these upper ends, like guys, it doesn't go much higher than that. Like not for athletes like us, not for athletes like this. And so for also this, going back to like, how are they measuring VO2 max? Am I missing something here? Because those are not like elite level. They're not like, Tour de France elite level, like 60s, high 60s, low 70s. I think some of the most ridiculous ones that have been reported and stuff. But that's not happening in recreational athletes. I would bet most people in our community are in the 40s, and then the fitter people in our communities are going to be in the low 50s, if I had to guess. Just because it's not something we chase. We're not hardcore aerobic athletes who are spending hours and hours trying to improve our VO2 max. But anyway, that's just something I wanted to point out, because I was like, that seems like a big change to me. And I know it wasn't statistical difference between a number standpoint, but the difference between 1% at 1 point on VO2 max in your overall fitness is massive. And I don't think that you can correlate numbers to that. So when I look at the numbers, I'm like, wow, maybe this is something that we should talk about. Again, going back to that, how long it actually takes to improve VO2 max. I've been doing so much research on just dialing in endurance programming for what we're doing on BCT. And some of the stuff I'm uncovering is just super annoying, because they're like, yeah, follow this type of training, and then like in 4 years, you're going to be a beast. And I'm like, damn, those are some long-term plans, but that's how long it takes to truly become like an endurance badass. It's the same with strength. It's not like strength is much different. You can see big jumps in strength, like a 20-pound PR, 30-pound PR. So it seems like you're progressing quickly, but in the grand scheme of things, you're not training for a year in strength and you have an elite level squat. You're not squatting right. 450 pounds after a year of training. Like that takes, that's another 4-year thing. So it takes a long time. So I do think when I look at the numbers, I'm a little bit more interested in the supplementation, because I'm like, yeah, they say it's not statistically significant, but if I could gain 4 points in my VO2 max over someone else in 8 weeks, I'm probably going to give it a try. And then the same with the power output. They measured in watts, and I'm just familiar with watts because the pre was 241. They went to 263 I don't know how long, maybe that was max watts over one of these, like say 120-second tests. And then the other group was 246, and then they maxed out at 271. Again, not statistically significant, right? But holding 263.5 watts for a significant amount of time versus 200 and almost 72 watts. When you take me out to my garage and have me do those two different workouts, again, completely different numbers wise, not huge statistical difference, but when we're talking about holding power output for 20 minutes, 30 minutes at those two different levels, that's significant to me. So I don't know how you could factor these things into. That's why I think you have to have a coach look at these things. Because to put it in perspective of what I'm trying to say is, if I was like, say you were some steroided out, ridiculously strong person who could lift 2,000 pounds. And so I'm like, yeah, Kyle can lift 2 tons. And I'm like, I can lift 1,000 pounds. I can lift 1 ton. Percentage wise, you do one more than me. Like maybe, like if we're just looking at the numbers, like, oh, there's not a huge statistical difference. Even though it's 2,000 pounds difference, right? Like I'm lifting 2,000 pounds, you're lifting 4,000 pounds or whatever. No, I said 1,000, 2,000. So half a ton versus a ton, right? It's a big difference once we get into the practicality of that. And I feel like that's what you need to look at in this study. So maybe it is worth it. But again, I would try and eat most of it is my big takeaway. Eat all the things Kyle mentioned, great sources of that, eat it. I have tried the beet supplementation, but I still think that you just get more from food. Like I prefer food, but I'm also saying, like, I think that if I ate a full beet, it's going to be more bang for my buck than like 2 scoops of a beet supplement. It's just easier to scoop some stuff than it is to eat a beet at times. But yeah, that's my takeaway and kind of when I started to dive into it, what I was seeing.
Yeah. On your last BCT video, you had a beet supplement. Do you remember what kind of supplement is that? Or do
It's
you
it's
off the
back
top of your
there.
head?
It's just I mean, it's like pure organic beets. Like each scoop is supposed to be like a beet or something like that.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I
It's
was
nothing
actually
else. Yeah.
just looking at the VO2. I was pulling up my phone while you were talking about that, and I mean, I have some data going back from when I wore my Apple Watch pretty early on Garage Gym Athlete, and I think my VO2 max has only gone up like 3 points in like 4 years
Right.
or something.
Mm,
So
And then it's harder as you age. There's like these cutoffs every 10 years. They're like, okay, this is the max. That's why VO2 max is heavily broken down by age. Um, but damn. And most of these, yeah, Apple Watch does it. Garmin is apparently really accurate in calculating your VO2 max. I pulled up some studies on that when I first got the Garmin. I thought that was interesting. Um, so yeah, it's cool stuff. If you do want to measure your VO2 max, it's fairly easy to do these days. And even if it's not 100% accurate, it's going to be consistently inaccurate. So you'll at least know if you're making a change. And so that's something to know. You guys have anything else on that one?
I think we covered it.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, maybe try it. I don't know if it's just eat it. It's fine. I'm basically telling you to eat vegetables. Just do it. Just go do it.
yeah, I mean, see the
Eat some
levels.
spinach, man. Spinach is good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
get your Popeye on.
I literally eat a cup of spinach a day. So
Yeah,
Um,
it's good stuff.
yeah, I'd be interested to see these levels. I've been eating celery a lot lately. Like every time I go to the store, it's just one of those things that I have on. And every day in my scramble, I just take one long stalk of celery and chop it up and put it in my scramble and stuff like that. I don't really know the levels on it. Sometimes I feel like lettuce is just wasted space on a plate, but everything else, radishes. My dad eats those a lot. I know they have a lot of other awesome things to it. I just haven't gotten into it.
all right,
Book time?
let's get into the book. So the book is The Coddling of the American Mind: How Good Intentions and Bad Ideas Are Setting Up a Generation for Failure by Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt.
Height.
Haidt.
Height.
Thanks, Kyle.
Height.
Haidt is definitely not it.
It's how it's spelled. It's not how. It's
Yeah,
not
I
how
was
it's
like-
pronounced.
An ironic name for the
Yeah, it would be ironic. I should have just read that one out loud before the podcast started. It would have been solved. Okay, so this is a very interesting book. I'll just kind of give a premise of what the book does and talks about, and then we can kind of give all of our opinions. And we all have a lot to say because it's a lot of this is geared towards what's going on in America, really. And I'm not going to lie. Overall, this book made me slightly depressed about the future of the United States of America. And I don't say that lightly. I know it's just one book or whatever, but they're not wrong. You can see what's going on in America. It's not hard to see how divided the country is and everything else. And we normally don't touch political or semi-political topics with a 10-foot pole here in the podcast, just because I know that's not why people are here. People are not here to hear about our opinions in a political nature, because you probably get that somewhere else, right? We're here to talk about fitness and being better humans. And so we're not necessarily going down the political road, but the reason I love this book is because I feel like it really fits in line with the idea of killing comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And the lack of comfort that's being killed that could possibly, ruin this generation that they're talking about. And I don't want to be all doom and gloom, because I think things normally work themselves out. But overall, it talks about what's happening on college campuses between both the left and the right, meaning, Democrat versus Republican, and how this hyper, a big word they use throughout the book is safetyism, how you trying to be safe, has just gotten a bit out of control to the point where on college campuses, they're removing guest speakers or like protesting a guest speaker because this person might challenge their idea. College professors are having to put trigger warnings in their syllabus now to let them know that they might encounter some material that could trigger them. And students are actually viewing discourse as physical and emotional mental harm these days. It's not like, if you believe in God and you go have a conversation with an atheist, that should just be an interesting conversation between the two of you. But that's not how it's viewed anymore. It's, you don't believe what I believe, and what you believe is so offensive to me, I'm now emotionally damaged. Is that's kind of the point that they got across in the book, and it's happening on a very extreme level. So pretty crazy. And that's the reason I wanted to bring this book to the attention of the team and talk about it on the podcast, because the second half of the book gets out of this whole, like, what's happening on college campuses, what's happening to this generation that is too protected and too safe. And by the way, it's not the millennial generation. It's not the millennial generation. I hate how much, because we're all millennials. And to be honest, millennials are up to like, what it is, like 40 something now, right? Like it's a wide range for millennials. And most people who are millennials won't even claim that they're millennials just because of the reputation millennials have gotten. But apparently this generation after millennials, what's it called? Is it called iGen? Is that what they were saying?
iGen or Generation Z is the term that I'm familiar with.
Yeah. And they're like, it's like even worse. If people thought millennials are bad, it's like worse than that, you know? And because most of us growing up, we knew life pre-iPhone. And the kids who are hitting college campuses today have never lived in a world without social media or an iPhone, you know? And so it has caused a lot of problems, but that's the second half of the book. And they're talking about what to do with kids and like some suggestions. And that was my favorite part of the book, as someone who has 3 kids, who's very cognizant of what's going on with them in the world, and me trying to protect them with just the rates we see in suicide and depression of young teens these days has skyrocketed. And I'm trying to shield my kids from that to a degree, you know, not without trying to be that overprotective parent that could damage them, but at the same time, like, you know, take every action I can to mitigate some of these negative consequences. So that's the book as a whole. There are a lot of little things that we could get into, but I'd love to hear what you guys think about the book and whether or not you think our listeners should read it.
Oh, 100% they should read it. I'm probably
Absolutely
going to post it on my Facebook, my own Facebook feed for people to read. I've been part of a book club on Discord, or a book community, and I recommended it on there as well already. Man, adversity is really dying right now. People just are very, just they don't want to be uncomfortable or go through any adversity, and it's kind of sprouting a lot of hypocrisy as well. And this really sheds what it is. You know, a lot of times the people that have been wanting and preaching for, you know, freedom of speech and being heard and all that stuff don't want to hear other people. Unless they conform to what they're saying, what they want. And if there's any sort of rebuttal, then they just basically plug their fingers in their ears and go la 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 kind of thing. So it was really interesting to see some of these, and it was like this book at times were like very eye opening, and it was frustrating in good and bad ways. Like there were just times where I was just like, man, I almost had to pause it and just shake my head, like, what the hell is going on, kind of things. And half of these things I didn't even know about. Half of these college incidences I really didn't know about. And it was really interesting how, because of where some of these colleges were very progressive at one point, but then they also have these ridiculous things happening where people are being stifled, and you know, people are grabbing their pitchforks and all that for if somebody said something in a abrasive way. Yeah, it's crazy. And one of the really interesting things, this is early on, and it was I like some of the verses. I mean, there's plenty of the college examples that he gives in real life situations, but there was other ones that were cool, like the peanut experiment. If you guys remember that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He did. That was really cool. I'd never heard about that before. So everybody knows that the peanut allergy has been a thing for a couple of decades, and we get into nutrition on other parts and whatnot. But they did an experiment to where all these schools were completely outlawing any sort of nuts, and doesn't matter if any kid had any nut allergy. So they did an experiment of like 2 different groups of kids, to where some of them, the parents actually exposed them to a little bit of nuts, and the other group, they completely stayed away from nuts, absolutely nothing with nuts, and then like checked in with them a year, 2 years, a couple of years later, and the group that was very against and away from nuts, kept away from nuts, developed nut allergies. And I thought that was really cool. That's like a biological proof of like going away from any sort of adversity or risk, and just sheltering people, how it can affect. So if it's happening like biologically, then mentally it's even big time. So that was a really, really interesting thing. And another term that I'm not sure if it was caught in the book, but I was reading some other stuff afterwards about it, how it used to be helicopter parenting, but now it's bulldozer parenting, to where they're just paving the way to get everything out of the way of any obstacles out of the way of for their kids. And then there was I didn't write it down, but it was preparing the kids for you should prepare the kids for the road, not the road for the kids, or one of those things. And that was really, really cool. But I know you guys are going to get more on the kid stuff. So those were some of the diversity stuff was crazy. And I just have even social media stories from like me personally that I've seen and encountered. Twitter is like the bane of all, is the worst place of all of the
dumpster fire.
Yeah, basically. And I really only go on there for football stuff, but sometimes I just, because no matter what, you follow some people, but they still, if they like or share some other stuff, it's like, well, I'm going to see it and then I'm going to read all these things. There was and this is also football related. So there was somebody in the football analyst communities. One person did something really bad. It was pretty bad, but I knew nothing about what the heck was going on. I just saw like the aftermath of the video, and I was like, okay, well, what happened before this? Like, all I asked, literally, I just asked on a thread, like, what's the context of this? And everybody's like, it doesn't matter what the context is. If you need to know the context, then it does, and then that means you agree with it, blah blah blah, and you should really question what you're saying. I was like, I'm just asking what the hell the context was. Like, I just need to know what the hell is going on. And yeah, I probably agree, and I did agreeing with what everybody was saying, but literally, I couldn't even ask a question of what a context of a video that what happened. Like, hey, how did this start? What happened before here? Oh, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't need to know how it started. That what he said was unforgivable. Well, context always matters. So that was just one example. And literally today, when I was on Twitter, there was, and this might even make its rounds afterwards. I guess recently, so Hollywood shut down because of COVID and stuff, and then there's all these mass protocols and whatnot. So I guess Mission Impossible 7, which I don't know why they need a seventh one, but is apparently filming right now, and they are like the example studio, and like Tom Cruise is like really been pushing to go through it, and like I don't know much of what's going on, but there was a recording of, I guess there was crew members that broke COVID protocols, and if you break protocols, they might get shooting shut down. Well, there's a recording of him just going off and yelling at everybody that like how they're messing up, how they need to stay within the guidelines, how if they don't, they're going to get fired, and all this, that, and the other. And like everybody in the comments was like, I agree with what he's saying, but does he have to yell at them? Are you kidding me? Adults can't be yelled at. And like every single person was like, I don't think they should be yelling at his own employees. Well, if you're going to get a major production or something shut down, you deserve to be yelled at. And I just think that if adults can't be yelled at, then what the heck messages are they spreading to their kids that, oh no, we shouldn't yell at people when they do some bad stuff. But yeah, so I'll
you're saying the world's getting too soft. I got you.
I'll simmer down now.
Kyle, what are your thoughts on the book?
Honestly, I think they should make Mission Impossible movies until Tom Cruise dies, if he ever does.
I don't know if he will die.
I'm waiting on him to go to space. He needs to go to space.
I think. Have you seen Altered Carbon?
No.
The show? Okay. Well, I think he has different units. You just pull the memory out and put it inside of another.
Oh, I got you.
Another beam.
I got you. So, with all of this stuff, everything that Joe said, I agree with everything he said. And going back to Jerred, something that you were talking about protecting kids and things like that. It's interesting in the book that it's because, and it's exactly what you said, because you said you're trying to protect your kids from depression and suicide, right? And having worked in youth ministry for a long time, like those are things that I'm acutely aware of, right? And what's interesting to me is that the things that and you said it without even thinking about it, but that's what you're thinking about as a parent. Like those are the things that you're thinking about protecting. And it's like, those are the problems that we are should be trying to protect our kids from today. But it seems like depression and suicide are much bigger issues today than like child abductions. You know what I mean? They even talk about child abductions in the book and how like 99.8% of missing children in this country come back home. Like, And the reasons that they were lost in the first place are typically not nearly as nefarious as we're always led to believe that they are, right? Like, I think it's like a fraction of 1% of kids are abducted by strangers, right? Like, the world today, at least in America, the world today, despite what the media would have you to believe, or what you may believe based on seeing what you've seen of the current situation, the United States of America is a much safer country today than it was in the 70s. And you think about, like, in the 70s, like in my parents, like they talk about when they were growing up, they would walk places, they would ride their bikes places all by themselves. They would, you know, they would get left in the car when they went to the grocery store, you know, things like that. And it's like, they didn't wear bike helmets, they didn't wear seatbelts, and they cover this stuff in the book too. But it's like the things that we are trying to protect our kids from, like things like that, are now being replaced by things that are much more serious, and things like, because the things like that, like the bike helmets and the child abduction or whatever, all those super dangerous things are not as much of a factor anymore. But we still have kids who are in really, really big danger, but the danger they're in is more mental now. And it comes from, like, and depression and suicide are the biggest things that we're fighting today. But the problem is, in trying to protect our kids from the things that are outside, forcing them to stay inside is actually increasing their likelihood of developing depression and attempting suicide. You know what I mean? And so it's strange that the things that we're trying to protect them from, okay, we've achieved a high level of security with these things outside that we're protecting our kids from, but the things that are happening inside are even worse, in my opinion. I mean, I can't imagine something worse than my child committing suicide. Like, I can't imagine that. And so they talk about a lot of that, and that's what stuck out to me more. Like the first half of the book, talking about these mindsets and these 3 untruths that they cover, and finding that internal locus of control and those kinds of things, of being in control of how you respond to things. Those are things that I was already really familiar with. And I really like how they covered them and how they went in depth on them. But what really stuck out to me was like the second half of the book, where they're talking about this parenting thing, and like the crazy things that we're seeing happening on college campuses today with these college students. These kids did not go to college and all of a sudden start doing these things, you know, start reacting in crazy ways and causing tons of property damage, and, you know, needing safe spaces away from words. You know what I mean? Like they were prepared for that as they were raised, you know. And I think, to me, that's the hardest part, is like, I'm responsible for my kids moving forward with this and how I raised them as a parent. And so they were conditioned to enter this world of college, and they're responding by pitching a fit because, and it's a pretty big fit, but they're pitching a fit because they've been sheltered. They haven't had to face any adversity, and they've been protected from anything that might harm them or anything that might challenge them. And so I thought that was the most compelling part of the book, was the second half, where it's talking about all of this came before they got to college. You know what I mean? And again, that goes back to my youth ministry days as well, of seeing this in teenagers and having worked with a bunch of them, and saying, you know, but these 3 untruths that they talk about, the untruth of fragility, that what doesn't kill you makes you weaker, the untruth of emotional reasoning, to always trust your feelings, and the untruth of us versus them, that life is a battle between good people and evil people. And it's like, those are things that I saw as a youth minister, you know what I mean? But it doesn't come to the kids, and the kids going to college and causing all these problems. They were primed for this because of the way they were raised. And that just put me on alert of, hey, make sure that you are teaching your kids these things, and teaching your kids. For me personally, I need to teach my kids that these are not things that we need to be thinking about. These are untruths. These are things that are not true about you. Like, you are not fragile. Like, it's okay for you to experience things that are experience adversity, things that challenge you, things that make you grow. It's okay. And just because somebody disagrees with you, they're not your enemy. You know what I mean? They don't hate you because they disagree with you, because I'm going to disagree with my kids. You know what I mean? And so if I teach them that anybody that disagrees with them is their enemy, that makes me their enemy, because I'm going to disagree with them at times. and I'm going to try to steer them in a different direction. And I'm not always going to approve of everything that they do. So anyway,
Maybe that's the key.
I've been on a long rant here, so I'm sorry.
It is a really good book, and I think everyone will get something out of it. And to your point, what they're pointing the finger at for this increased depression and suicide is really device usage. They had some studies about number of hours spent on device, and I put this same exact information in Killing Comfort as like more of a thought experiment. Like, we don't know if it's the device itself with the dopamine hits or social media or whatever specifically. We just know it's something. And so we can hide behind the, hey, we don't know if it's correlation or causation. I don't care. I'm going to use my phone less, and I'm not going to give my kids a smartphone for maybe ever. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
It's just not going to happen. And so these are the things that we have to start looking at without hamstringing our children. And these are the things I think everyone needs to start thinking about a little bit more, because it's all about perspective, right? Like 2020, a lot of people are saying it's the hardest year ever or whatever. One, in the grand scheme of pandemics, this was an easy one. Okay. Yeah. Like, and this is, if I'm getting political now, even though a pandemic should not be political, this one was a good one to start with, because we could have but one that's much worse, that kills 50% of the people it touches in, Black Plague style, like just awful, real bad stuff. So in the grand scheme of pandemics, there might be some later. This was a good warm up, if you will. And we still have Amazon and all these other things. Like, I know some people may have lost their jobs and some people may have lost family members. I'm not saying those things are not hard challenges to go through, but I'm just saying in the grand scheme of things, my perspective is always how much worse could things be. And the fact that you live in the United States of America and you're not being hunted and killed because of some sort of belief, there's not a militia who's trying to take over your local part of the city. Those types of things are my perspective. And I do think a lot of that had to do with me being in the military and knowing about all these things that are going around in other parts of the world and being like, wow, like, I'm just glad that that's not a problem I ever have to worry about, and because it's hard to be uncomfortable in today's world because of our iPhones, because of Amazon, because of all these things. It's very easy to be coddled in today's world, because they forget what that saying is like your life today is like that of a king, in the 1600s or whatever. People will bring you food at the click of a button, and like all the, like your lifestyle. So it's hard to not coddle yourself or your kids just with how easy everything is in today's world. So you have to go intentionally seek out those challenges, those risks, those hard things. That's what my entire book is about. But then how do you also do that for your children and other people? Because this is the big part of everything that we're going through is this division, right? Like, when I was younger, I didn't think it was a big deal if someone was a Republican or a Democrat. And this is slightly political just because the book does cover this stuff. Because I just thought it was like, you're whatever, you believe some certain things, it's your party affiliation. It wasn't until more recently, and this just could be my perspective, that it became like, I hate you because you're that thing and I'm this thing. And I never viewed it that way growing up. It was always like, these people are that, these people are this, and that's that. Like, it wasn't like a big deal, like you could still be friends and vote differently. And it's not at that point anymore. It's so the country is so divided. And we're coming up with this level of hatred. And my biggest fear is the division, not whether who's right or who's wrong. Like, if you're a Democrat and you're like celebrating because Biden won, or say Trump had won and you're a Republican and you're celebrating that Trump won, nobody won. Like, the country's almost split in half and they hate each other. Everyone's lost. Because if you think things like a civil war can't happen or complete economic collapse and meltdown, you think, for some reason, people think those things can't happen. That's all that's ever happened in history ever. Like, no one just keeps going forever and everything's awesome. Like, companies implode, or countries implode, and these things happen. Things get bad. And so it's very possible for us to go down that path unless we figure something out. Now, I am an optimist overall when it comes to human beings, because I don't think the world is that divided in a day to day when elections aren't going on world. You know what I mean? So I think that people are a little bit kinder, and it's not as big of a deal. But I think it gets really magnified on these college campuses. And then after college campuses, where do those people go next? And that's into the workforce and shape all this stuff. So I think that you should really read it if you want a lot of good stuff. Tips for kids. My basic tips were heavily limit screen time, which I already do. Let them take risks and let them explore. I know my kids spend about 90% of their time outside here and not watching TV, not playing on a phone, not on an iPad. And that's a big reason why we moved where we moved. That was a decision because we were living in that super close house to house suburban lifestyle since 2018. And we just did an inner city move because my kids, like, there's nothing to do. Like, we had a postage stamp for a front yard and they just didn't know what to do. I'm like, all right, fine, we'll move. You'll live outside. And, we've made those big decisions basically for our kids. And not everyone's in that position. I get it, but these are things that we have to think about now. And I feel like every generation is handed some sort of shit. Sorry for the expletive there, that they didn't expect. And I also put this in my book. Like, we are very aware. Like, if Joe has kids in the future, Kyle has kids now, I have young kids. Now we're very aware of what the hell we're doing with our phones and screen time and like trying to, but there's something else we don't even know about right now that's probably being injected that we don't realize. And, I put in the book, back in the day, it was smoking. No one thought smoking was a big deal. Great. An entire generation gets lung cancer. Secondhand smoke kills a bunch of people because we thought it was innocuous, but it wasn't. It was a big deal. And this is what happened to iGen. iGen parents, which some are probably listening to this, you probably didn't think it was a big deal. I got my first phone when I was in the 7th grade. Like, my parents didn't think anything of it. It wasn't a smartphone, but I got my first phone when I was in the 7th grade so they could call me and all this other stuff. And other kids, it mainly had to do with like sports and whatnot. That was their justification. But all my phone could do was that thing, was call and text. And so I see why parents now might be giving their kids a phone in the 5th grade, 4th grade, 6th grade, but they're not giving them some phone that can't do anything. They're giving them a phone that gives them access to the world in possibly a negative way. All their friends are doing it, so they have to do it too. But you didn't think that was going to be an issue. Like, I don't blame any parent for that. You take them back 15 years. They had no idea that was going to be an issue. And now it's a huge freaking issue. And every generation gets thrown something like this. And I think this is just one thing that we got to look out for, and who knows what's next.
Remember the good old days when your parents just didn't want to see you until dinner time?
Yeah.
Yep. I do.
That was the thing.
I do. I had doors locked on me. I was locked outdoors. Was not permitted inside.
We've done that.
Survive.
Yeah.
I get it.
Had to prove that there was a serious injury. And by serious, I mean like
Blood?
something broken, something bleeding. And I mean bleeding like profusely. Or nope, deal with it.
Put the Band-Aid under the door slit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it was, we moved here, and then we have some friends that live relatively close, like a half mile away. And I remember my kids rode their bike. Like, they're going to ride their bike down there. And I was like, I'm such a control freak. I was like, I really want to know that they got there. It's only a half mile away. There's no other way to access my neighborhood. There's one entry and one exit. There's not like some bad people could come out of the woods. It's not like, it's a very, very safe place. But that control freak inside of me was like, I have to know. I didn't act on it, but it's in me, right? It's in me that I wanted to do that thing. And I was just like, okay, I'm sure they're there. We're fine. Maybe I'm a bad parent for that. But ultimately I'm not driving my kids a half mile. You know what I mean? Like, you walk or ride your bike, you figure it out. But anyway, I see why it's there. Like, it's in me. It was built in me somehow to have this ridiculous level of control. But got to back off somehow.
I'm there as well, man. I mean, I love my kids. And when I say let them have experiences, when I say let them fail, when I say let them experience, things that are negative in their life, I'm not saying that I'm going to stand idly by and watch my child jump off a cliff. You know what I mean? Like if we're out hiking or something, like they're not getting anywhere close to the edge of that cliff. You know what I mean? Because like that's not a lesson they need to learn. You know what I mean?
That's the
They
wrong
don't.
kind of discomfort.
Yeah, they don't need to learn what happens when you jump off a cliff and you hit bottom. 200 or 300 feet later. You know what I mean? They don't need to learn that lesson. But there are other things that are not as extreme as that kids do need to learn. They need to learn how to interact with each other. They need to learn, like, kids take toys away from each other. When kids are playing with each other, they push each other, they knock each other down, they get injured. But that's part of life. And those things, they need to learn some autonomy. You know what I mean? And so we can't just keep sheltering them on those things. I will say, you were talking about correlations, and they talk about correlations in the book, and they talk about this, like, we're not saying that this is what's causing it, because you talked about like the phones and the social, like, I don't know that we can say that that is what's causing it, this rise in suicide and depression, but like there are things that correlate to those. So two things they highlight that correlate with higher depression and suicide are electronic device use and watching TV. We're not saying those two things cause those things, but they correlate with higher rates of depression and suicide. And 5 things they talk about that correlate with lower depression and suicide are sports and exercise, attending religious services, reading books and print media, having in-person interactions, and doing homework. It's like those 5 things that, again, those things aren't causing lower rates of depression and suicide, but they correlate to those things. And it's like, let's talk about that. Let's think about that.
I mean, just you could do a self-experiment. Like, I don't need, this correlation versus causation, because I'm not a scientist, right? Like, I can do whatever the hell I want. And N equals 1, I always say, is the most important if you're actually doing the experiment. So I'm good with no screen time for my kids. And because I even put this in my book, if I'm wrong, if it's like, it wasn't social media or phones, and I'm like, okay, you know what we did? We went on hikes. We lifted some kettlebells. We went running. We were reading books. I'm not going to have any regrets.
Yeah.
Like, damn, man, I wish they would have been on this phone 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
Like, that's never going to happen. But if you want to do a good N equals 1, if you're wondering how mental health is correlated to your phone use, try and force yourself to spend 5 to 6 hours a day on your phone, primarily social media. Just do it for a week. See how you feel after.
Yep.
And if that's a big eye opener for you, then maybe think about it. But let's move on to the workout. Obviously, we loved this book. I don't think we've had this long of a discussion on a book or covered it in such detail, but it got us all going in one way or another. A lot of great content. So read it, The Coddling of the American Mind. It's a great one. Joe, you got the workout?
Yes, I do. So this is a classic one and one of the harder ones as well, one of the hardest ones to achieve. And we haven't done this. So if you've been in the program, we haven't done this since August 1st. So it's been a while. So we are doing Condition Me to the Grave, as you said earlier. And how this is going to work, I'm going to run through the machine's official version, and then we'll do the sub version, and then you can mix and match as you go. So it starts off with 100 calories on the rower, 100 calories on the Airdyne, and 100 double unders. Then run 1 mile, and 75 cal row, 75 cal Airdyne, 75 double unders, run a mile, 50 cal row, 50 cal Airdyne, 50 double unders, run a mile, 25, 25, 25, and then you're done. So there's 3 miles of running in between the 100, 75, 50, 25 of those 3 things. And then without machines, now, if you only have a rower but no Airdyne, or vice versa, or whatever, these are the subs, and that is sumo deadlifts and box step ups. So reps would be the same. So that means if you say you have a Airdyne but not a rower, you're going to do sumo deadlifts and then your Airdyne and then double unders, and vice versa, box step ups. And that's total reps, not each leg, and still 100 double unders. And still the run in 1 mile. And that is the workout with a officially 60-minute time cap. If you really wanted to push yourself and get under that, there's a time cap. A lot of people like to, once they get to a certain point, they just want to finish, but there is a time cap for 60 minutes.
Yeah, I would stick to that time cap too.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Because it's almost like the zone 2 workout where if you hold your heart rate in zone 2, and you do a 50-minute workout every time like we do during our deload. And it's cool to see, hey, I went 400 meters further or a mile further, or, that's really cool progress to see. And that's the same with Condition Me to the Grave. Because when I first started doing it years ago, I couldn't finish it. And now I can finish it. That's cool progress to see. But I just benchmarked how far I got. Like, okay, I finished the 75s or I finished the 25s, like wherever you got, benchmark that and cap yourself hard at that 60 minutes. Because that is a long workout. That's a lot of aerobic work. I really don't think you need to go beyond that. But if you just keep following our training and stay consistent, you will see that you finish more and more of that workout every time we program it, especially when it's like whatever, 6 months in between programming it, 4 months. I don't know where we're at. But yeah, my overall tip is stay hard on the cap and then pace everything to a pace level that you know you can handle. I do always mention the pace card. We have the picture of that in the Facebook group. And I normally repost it once this workout comes up. The pace card is for finishing it. And if you don't think you're going to finish it, make your own pace card for your expectations. So that would be my thing, is like make a pace card. Because the first time I ever actually finished it was when I had a pace card, because I knew like you can kind of get in your head with this workout because it's so front loaded with work. You're like, I'll never finish this. Like that's it. I'll never finish this workout, but it's so front loaded with so much work, it gets significantly less and less each round you go. So make a pace card for yourself or use the one that we have. And that's all I got on tips for that one.
I'll only go over some of the scaling ones for like the step ups. Don't be a really high step up on that. Do like a normal, like you would do on a step up. So, probably 20 inches for most people. So you're not reaching up too high. You're not pushing off with your bottom leg kind of thing. And I mean, double unders are double unders. So double those for singles. And sumo deadlifts, does say sumo deadlifts, that this is meant to be done with a kettlebell, not a barbell. So kettlebell sumo deadlifts, they're not very heavy, so they'll go really quick as well.
So I'm going to take over. I'm going to stand in for Ashley and do the wine pairing. I can't swirl a wine glass like she does.
She does a really good job.
Even in the air.
Well, experience, Just kidding.
I wasn't saying that,
kidding.
but Joe said it. Joe said it, not me. I actually asked her what she would suggest for this one, and she went with some metal. She said Godsmack, Pantera, some Korn, or System of a Down. Because this one, it's a lot of work, and so get something that's got a fast beat and something that's kind of heavy as well to put you in the right mindset. I would also throw in personally, since we're going metal for this one, a metal wine. I don't know how that would work. Anyway, since we're going metal for this one, I would throw it back. I kind of like the older stuff. And so I would go with either some Black Sabbath, maybe some Motorhead, or some Iron Maiden. There you go. So there's your wine pairing for this workout.
Cool.
I thought of I told you guys before the podcast, a new philosophy on beats pairing, on music pairing. That is, the more beats, heart rate, the more beats, music. So higher the beats, higher the beats.
There you go.
It's just science.
Doesn't Spotify have that, like a beats per minute playlist you can pick?
Man, I haven't done that. I know there's Spotify can link to it. There's a lot of these wearables now to where when you're running, they will find music to match your cadence, which is ridiculous. I don't know how to do that. Like, so a lot of times I just want to listen to what I want to listen to.
That's the camp I'm in. So I've never played with that stuff either.
Technology is the one thing that can really kill my workout, like absolutely completely. And if something gets messed up while messing with this stuff, I'm just throwing the towel. Even if I'm like 2 miles away and I have to run home, I'm just throwing in the towel, turn around and walk and just pout all the way home. That's just what technology does.
I was interviewed on is basically an endurance podcast. So they're both triathletes and they were interviewing me about the book Killing Comfort. And I mentioned, just because I knew their audience and knew them, and I mentioned like the hardest challenge most endurance athletes faced on any given day is like their Bluetooth not connecting, or something like that. And they just died laughing because of how true that statement is. It's like, yeah, that's probably the hardest thing that we go through is like my heart rate monitor is not connecting to my watch and I cannot even stand it. Like that's the challenges we face today. But yeah.
Looks like I'm primed to be an endurance athlete.
Right. Well, it happens to me too. Like I'll get, I have to recalibrate if I'm like, okay, the AirPods don't want to connect to my Garmin. I'll spend it's the time. If I've spent like 10 minutes on it and I'm like, no, I should already be training. Like
Yeah.
Yep.
this is getting that's what starts to get frustrating. And then I'll just like abandon it.
Look,
Well, I might
diversity in
do
life
that
is
with like my playlist, like my AirPods. Like if there's workouts where like there's the like the barbell work, but then we'll have like running or something like that. Like for this one, like, you know, it's pretty much the same, but I don't know. I'll probably change it up when I'm running. So like when I go out to run, like I might like hit my AirPod and go to a different song, you know what I mean, or something like that, and pair that with the running. But like, I don't know. I can't
as we
imagine
said,
having something that just does that for me. Like it
But yeah,
just,
what if you don't like the
it
music?
just,
It
it
wouldn't
just
work.
thinks about it, and it's like, oh, you're running now. I'm gonna change the song for you. I don't know that. I think that would freak me out a little bit.
it's like I don't care if Lady Gaga goes with my
Yeah.
running beats. I don't want to listen to this.
Yeah, because if you actually look at this is way too in the weeds and we need to get out of here. But if you're stride, if you're running fast, like a fast mile or like whatever, and you're at like 170 steps per minute or whatever, like that's a fast song, and like,
Mm.
what are you going to be playing me? Like, what if I get to 180?
Pantera.
Like, what are we doing now? So that would be hard. But that's it, guys. A little bit longer podcast, but great book, great conversation. I really enjoyed it today. Hopefully you guys go pick that up and read the book. Again, no affiliation with any of these authors or their books. We just pick them here and there when we come across them. So if you guys do have any recommendations, let us know in the Facebook group. But it is a new cycle. I'll reiterate that. Go to garagegymathlete.com, sign up for your free trial, start the year off right. Let's crush 2021. Because I think everyone now in the world is a garage gym athlete of some sort, whether you think you are or
By
you
default.
aren't. Yeah, you figured out how to work at home over the last year. So now you can put those skills to use with our programming and see a lot of results. So that's it for this one, guys. Thanks for listening or watching if you're on the YouTube.